You see, for most of my life, I usually don't 100% games. I usually just finish the story and then just drop it forever. But now I want to try to platinum games, and what better game to start with than? Released in November 12th, 2020, along with the PS5, every owner of a PlayStation 5 has at least seen or heard of Astros Playroom. And now I'm going to be attempting to platinum it as my first platinum ever. Starting off in Memory Meadows, I immediately turned around off the spawn to get our first artifact, which was a PS1 controller. We got a gold catch. Oh, got an artifact. An achievement. Oh, it's a PlayStation 1 controller. So we have to collect artifacts now? And collect artifacts we do, since there are over 50 artifacts in the game, and we have barely collected one. As we continue through Memory Meadows, we eventually make our way up a tower, where we get ended by a tornado. Eventually we get to the second part of the world, where we end up getting a bowling ball suit and we have to roll around the world to navigate. While I was just messing around the suit, I ended up accidentally getting an achievement for knocking down the bowling pins. Watch me get this strike first try. That's straight to it. Oh, got an achievement. For knocking down all the bowling pins? While crossing this bridge in the game, I also ended up catching another hidden artifact. Gimme this golden catch. What is that? PlayStation memory card. So long, overnight pauses. As you continue, you'll get to this part where you're prompted to go left. But if you go right over these moving platforms, you will get another artifact. Another artifact? Oh, it's a game disc. Astrobot for the PlayStation. Games coated in mysterious black ooze. Oh, the back is black. Moving on, I stumbled across a puzzle piece. And I had collected puzzle pieces before this part, but I didn't know they were required for the platinum, so I wasn't recording. But I got all the ones in this stage, and so this level is cleared. For the next section, as we hopped across the clouds, I noticed the puzzle piece. So after doing a little bit of extra cloud hopping, I eventually grabbed it. And just a little bit ahead, we got our final artifact for this level, which was a PlayStation portable monitor. Oh, we got a PS1 LCD monitor. Flipping genius. At the end, after riding this duck, we eventually sped around the rest of the level, picking up the final puzzle pieces, and at the end we got our final artifact. Big finale. And we got a PlayStation 1. And an achievement, do it. Dude, this looks sick. 3-dimensional Big Bang. And with that, we headed back to our hub world, where all our artifacts were stored and we collected some puzzle pieces. While I was messing around, I accidentally got an achievement for opening the disc cartridge. And with that, World 1 is completed. Now you might be wondering, how is World 1 completed? You still have many missing puzzle pieces up there. I know, and we'll come back to that later. Moving on to the next world, SSD Speedway, where after getting the puzzle piece that was right behind the spawn, I moved on to where I got a jetpack and ended up exploding dynamite to get a new artifact. And it's a PS2 multi-tap. Guaranteed fun. Moving on through SSD Speedway, eventually I got to this little path when a meteor started coming my way. It gave me a little wire, and when I pulled it, I got a new artifact. And it's a PS2 game disc. Blue is the new black. Oh, it is blue. Then I got to a point in the game where they gave me like some sort of mini like paintball gun. And I'd just like to warn you, the robot violence you are about to see will not be filtered. Eventually the game led me to this part where I had to blow up even more dynamite, and after I blew it up, it revealed a puzzle piece. Then there was like a mini boss fight where I had to light these dynamites in order to get the boss's weak spot, but he was pretty easy, and I beat him first try. Then he exploded and it ended up sending me up a pipe, which conveniently was the end of the level. It spat me out towards a floating road made of PlayStation buttons, and after scurrying my way across the road, I reached the end of the level, and for my final artifact, it gave me a PlayStation 2. And that was SSD Speedway done. So now that's the end of World 2. And while I went back to the hub world and looked at my new artifacts, I ended up accidentally getting 2 achievements. One for hitting the PlayStation logo on the PS2 causing it to turn, and one for defeating 3 enemies in a short time. Anyway, that was the full end of World 2. Time for World 3. World 3 started with that happy bounce from this fellow that ended up into a sandstorm that brought me into a white room, which was actually the entrance to a room full of water. While I was in there messing around, I accidentally got an achievement for jumping off a diving board. At this point in the game, I was getting pretty bored since I've been playing for almost 4 hours straight. So I decided to just kind of mess around, and I ended up pushing some of these penguins off of the ice. This level was pretty boring, so I won't bore you and I'll just get to the chase on what happened. I got 2 artifacts. A PS Move controller sharpshooter, and a PS Move shooting attachment. I also got 2 achievements. One for breaking these beach ball containers and keeping them up in the air for 5 or more seconds. And one for getting all the puzzle pieces in CPU springs. Once I completed CPU springs, at the very end, for my hard work, I was given a PlayStation 3 trophy. And with that, CPU springs is now completed, only 1 world left. The final world started with a cross over a treacherous drop, followed by almost getting smushed by a giant yellow container. I also found this secret room, which prompted me to pull a wire, and when I pulled it, I got some coins and lyrics to a song, and if we hit 100 likes, I'll sing it. In this level, we were also given a monkey suit that allows us to climb using little snubs embedded in the walls. We also got quite a few artifacts in this level, such as a PlayStation camera, a PS VR processing unit, a PlayStation Vita, and a PS VR headset. In this level, I was also given a bow and arrow type of weapon that I used to blow up these little dynamites on the bridge. Which cleared a path that I could use to cross. And once I cleared all the enemies and hopped on top of the platform, it revealed this little dynamite in the distance. And when I shot it, it triggered a boss fight. The boss began shooting PlayStation O buttons at me, and I had to dodge them, but if I'm being honest, this boss fight was pretty easy, and I quickly sped around the whole thing. And once I defeated it, it granted me passage to the remainder of the level. And for beating this level and the boss, I was granted with a PlayStation 4. There was only one part left, my favorite part to platinum this game, and debatably the best part of this game, the gacha machine. Let's go gambling! For this part, if I'm being honest, we mostly got puzzle pieces, but there were a few cool things. Like when we got a PlayStation, it said, surely can't get smaller than this. But then immediately after, we got a PlayStation 3 Slim, and it said, okay, maybe it can. Then we continued gambling for about 7 more minutes, and then I collected everything in the gacha machine, which meant there was only one last part in the game left before we platinum. When I finished the last level, the game alerted me that there was something new in the underground area. And when I arrived, everybody was scared. Even the big fella in the cage was scared. And I guess I was meant to go inside. So after a cool opening, I stepped in. And I began taking back in time, back to the year 1994. I was then spat out into this dark area that had a PlayStation console and an old TV. I looked around wondering if I was supposed to do something, and I began hitting things, but nothing would work. But then when I accidentally hit the power button, the game just closed. and Demo 1 appeared on the screen. Pieces of memory cards began to spawn, and I climbed them as I reached a CD platform. It led me deeper and deeper into the abyss, spawning dangerous enemies along the way. After a few more area, eventually, a final long path of memory cards appeared, and it kept going, seeming to not end, until it led me to a path where an old textured land stood. 2 hearts spawned behind me. Looking around, I wondered what to do, and then all of a sudden, a giant old school textured dinosaur came and started spitting dangerous enemies at me. Was this supposed to be a secret boss fight? It launched CD disc at me and I had to move out of the way before it chomped down on the platform. This boss fight was actually tricky compared to the other ones in the normal game. I ended up losing one of my 3 lives immediately. This boss fight was definitely much more harder than the other ones. I quickly had to defeat the enemies before it would chomp down again. It also ended up tipping the platform, causing me to have to jump over his attacks and keep moving, otherwise I get thrown off. Then eventually something shiny, his eye. His eye was his weak point. If I just hit his eye a few more times, I would be in the clear. But it was much easier said than done, since he was constantly launching more and more enemies at me and chomping down on the platform, launching CDs. It was just a bunch going on at once, and I'm surprised I didn't lose more than 1 life in this stage so far. Eventually, after dodging more and more attacks, the dinosaur was almost through. Once his eye became vulnerable again, I quickly struck it, defeating the beast. In victory, Astro began hitting some of the slickest moves I've ever seen. And then, now a metal futuristic dinosaur came up behind him. And an epic chase ensued, where I had to climb over the pillars and not fall off or else I'd get burned alive. This part was actually hard and had me questioning if I would even make this, but luckily it was decently short, and stage 2 of the boss fight began. Now he was much faster and his attacks were much harder to dodge. A laser striking down every few seconds. It was really hard to dodge, since there were only 2 attacks. And then eventually he started raining missiles on me, and I somehow managed to dodge all of them. And now his chomps were over half the stage. I had to be fast and maneuverable if I wanted to survive this boss fight. Then he began spitting much more enemies than last time. This boss fight was definitely meant to be a challenge. And CDs were now doubled, sometimes tripled. With the new boss fight here, I wonder, was his weak point the same, or would I have to strike a different point if I wanted to defeat him? But I couldn't think of that now since I was too busy dodging attacks. Then he spat dozens of enemies at me, while launching arrows. I was desperately trying to dodge, but sadly I lost a life. This was my final life. If I died again, everything I had been through would have been for nothing. But then a trophy appeared. I wondered what to do with it. So I just kind of ran around it for a bit, but then eventually I realized that I had to pick up the trophy and throw it at his eye. His eye was the weak point. But then I had to strike it, which I was a little too late in doing. Luckily, it spawned another trophy shortly right after. This time I was now fully aware of what I needed to do. I picked up the trophy and yoinked it at his eye, and then I began smacking his eye as hard as I could. 1 eye down, only 1 eye left to go. With the fearsome roar, phase 2 began. His attacks were now extremely faster, shooting multiple lasers at once. But now it spawned a platinum trophy. Just what I needed. I threw it at him and began smacking at his eye, defeating the boss. Then a wire appeared on his tongue. The game encouraged me to pull it, and it was my grip versus his, pulling and pulling as hard as we could, until eventually, I had defeated him once and for all. Astro jumped with joy as we have finally defeated the boss, while fireworks awarded him in the background, as we rolled into the credits. But then, as the credits were rolling, right after it brought me to a secret area. A little area called One More Thing that I truly wasn't expecting. This area was a strange purple shade in the middle of the nowhere. As I crossed the Rainbow PlayStation Bridge, there was a little wire in the floor. And when I pulled it, it gave me a new artifact. It had given me a Pulse 3D wireless headset for the PS5. It was cool since I had actually never seen one of these ever, and it looked interesting. Moving on to the next island was actually pretty long. It was quite a distance from the first island. But there was another set of wires here, which meant another artifact. And this time, the game had given me a HD camera. Camera looks like a calm era, it said. I stared at this artifact wondering if this was a webcam. But now I had time to move on to the third island. This time it brought me a trampoline. As I crossed the next rainbow road, I wondered what the next artifact could be. We already got a camera and a headset. This time it was none other than the DualShock 5 for the PS5, or the DualSense wireless controller. It's all in your hands now, and it quite literally was, since I was using it to play the game. As I stored this next artifact in my treasure trove, I began hopping to the next island, thinking I could know what it was. Each level now had given me a new PlayStation. Now since this was the final level, I assumed that this would give me a PlayStation 5. And I was correct. For my final artifact, I was given a PS5. Number 5 is alive, and it truly was. And with that, I had now collected all the artifacts and all the puzzle pieces except one. And for the last time, Astro flew away, leaving a golden sign behind him. I began making my way higher and higher among the CPU plaza, since it was at the very top, located on a little ledge. As I went up there, I started thinking back on all the levels. I usually never complete games like I said, and this game seemed like a pretty strange game to complete, but it was the first game I had on PS5, so it sort of made sense. I started to think back and wonder, had I missed anything? Because I kind of wanted this to be the end to make it kind of look good. But I began to be a little nervous. If I had picked up everything, I forgot something. But I decided just to hope I did, and continue going up the spiral. Eventually I made it to the top, and with the puzzle piece in sights, I went for it. Let's go! Finally, bro. I've been grinding this game for like 3 days just to get the platinum. I have finally done it. Platinum my first game. I did everything this game had to offer. And now I'm left wondering, should I try to platinum other games? If so, what game should I platinum? Let me know in the comments. And remember, 100 likes, I sing the GPU jungle song.